in the U.S. since 2013. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
And finally, despite a strong economy, about 40% of American families struggled to meet at least one of their basic needs last year, including paying for food, health care, housing, or utilities. That's according to an Urban Institute survey of nearly 7,600 adults. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
It's time to call your senators. We need to tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Senators respond to constituent calls. So call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, should have just said, we think this guy is a sleaze. There must be something there. And now we have Manafort and 17 very talented prosecutors who are also liberal Democrats just searching for crimes of anyone around Donald Trump.
You know, the whole thing raises more suspicion that the FBI politicized these investigations during the election, and it just begs for an outside independent prosecutor to go back through this evidence, through these emails, and see if the FBI was trying to cover up material evidence in this case.
To me, the headline would be Manafort convicted of a bunch of stuff that have nothing to do with Russian collusion.
It should be an Onion headline, right? 2-year investigation and tons of resources and tons of money reveals white-collar people shady.
Yeah.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Hey. Hello, citizens of America. It's my pleasure to be with you. Also holding citizenship to this great land, which means I have rights and privileges that no other person without those same citizenship proof, those papers, can claim. That's a part of being an American. So welcome to the show. It's Tuesday, and we have a jam-packed program for you to include someone very special who was here last week, who's back again this week, but this time to talk about how the Democrats are trying to steal the heritage of Black Americans and just pass it out to any old Tom, Dick, or Jenny who might be interested in having a little piece of it. So we'll be talking to Ann Coulter, but first we actually have Obianuju Ekeocha. She's the founder and president of culture at Life Africa. She's an author, a pro-life speaker. She's our guest in the next segment. And then third segment, we'll have Ann Coulter. And then in hour 2, we're going to be speaking to Carman. He goes by one name because he is a 10 million plus album selling, Grammy award winning Christian artist who's written some of the songs that we hum. And as we're doing our work around the house, we know them by heart. We've heard them since we were children. He wrote and sung those songs. So he's going to be on with us promoting his new concert that he's having. It's so free concert tour. It's going to be really fantastic. So he's going to come on and talk to us about that. I would love to just point you to my Twitter and StaceyOnTheRight.com, where you can follow and subscribe and never miss anything. So right now, let's get into the show. There's this guy. His name's Jimmy Dore. He has a show, and he's a liberal, but this is my second time seeing him featured on a website that I frequent, where he's saying things that it's not typical for liberals to say. And periodically throughout the show, you'll see me fanning myself, for those who are streaming, with my little Tupelo fan. They gave me this as a part of my Tupelo welcome packet from the Marriage and Family Conference. It's the gift that keeps on giving, because it's hot in here. St. Louis is burning up. We're in the 90s, but effective temperature is like well over 100. It's hot. And so it's hot in here too. AC's blasting and it's still super hot. So you'll see me doing this a little bit through the show. Never fear. All is well. So Jimmy Dore makes this point on his show. I found it so astounding, not because we haven't kind of made this point before on the program or that you're not all aware of it, but it's so important for us to counter the narratives of the left. when we have these conversations here on the show, when we're communicating back and forth and you guys are calling in and we're having this it's a dialogue. You know what really rocks about it? That every time we're telling the truth on this show, it counters at least 18 of the lies that are being told elsewhere. And honestly, so I made it through Ann Coulter's book. And just like the other books of hers that I've read, it is the primer on, so whatever subject matter she covers in a book, she covers it to the point that it's irrefutable. So if someone says, she doesn't know, no, sorry, you can dispute things in the book bring your own sources and dispute the things that she puts in the book. But you can't say she's not informed or that she doesn't have the sources in the back for you to verify or that it's not multiple source. So instead of just saying, I found this on this website, therefore it's true, she finds all of the source material and puts together the picture where she completely takes apart whatever the subject matter is, whether it's James Comey or the FBI or the CIA. She went back 20, 30, 40, 50 years on the CIA and the FBI and cataloged their dereliction of duty in this book. And that's why I can't take you seriously if you're going to criticize someone who's gone to the trouble of writing a book. It's so hard. And researching it and putting it all together and then going out and talking about it and you don't even take the time to read it, that means you're out of the conversation. I might tweet you a couple times, but then we're done. So you've got this guy, Jimmy Dore, and he's got this I think it's a YouTube show and a radio show. I'm not really sure. All I know is I've never heard a liberal like he I don't really consider him to be a liberal Democrat because he's too hard on Democrats for that to be the case. Like, that's just not the hallmark of being a Democrat, is being hard on your own side. He's talking about the Russian collusion, which it's the biggest nothing burger this century. After reading Ann Coulter's book, after looking at, we've had someone on, yesterday we had a guest on, Ron, an attorney who talked about just how much of a nothing burger this is. You've even got the people who were the original unnamed sources now coming out and saying, yeah, I lied about that. I wasn't completely honest about that. The dossier itself, the source document for this entire investigation, is just basically like if I got angry at someone and went and typed up a whole bunch of stuff like that angry typing cat meme, just typed up a whole bunch of stuff, like anything I could think of that was horrible that I would say about somebody I didn't like, typed it up, made sure that it looked neat and was at least, like 50 pages, and then sent it over. And someone said, you know what? We think you're an expert about this person because you have a background in the military. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pay you for that. And I'm like, oop, I better make it really juicy. So I buff it up a little bit and make it super juicy. Stuff that's so salacious that even mainstream media outlets, when they got their hands on it, they're like, well, we got to really source some of this stuff up before we publish this. And then I send it over and I get paid. And I do a little TV and stuff, but mainly I just wanted to get paid and I wanted to hurt the person that I wrote the document about. That's what the dossier is. Christopher Steele wanting to hurt Donald Trump, writing something that was so salacious that most news media outlets wouldn't take it until they realized that Americans simply did not care. They weren't willing to put down their coffee to think about how inconsequential it was that Hillary Clinton was still talking about her loss. Nobody cared. Everybody was like, oh, well, Donald Trump, he won. So we'll have 4 or 8 years of Donald Trump. And it was people who liked him and people who didn't like him. And then you have your hardcore fringe leftists who are like, we can't handle this. We can't allow this to stand. We've got to have the insurance policy we were promised by the FBI. And that insurance policy is the dossier. And it's being used to the utmost of effectiveness, but it is nothing. So this guy, Jimmy Dore, starts talking about how instead of Russian collusion, Mueller finds that Manafort didn't pay his taxes and Cohen paid a prostitute. And he exclaims, "Ooh, you got him." It's number 4.
People see the headlines, right? Cohen pleads guilty. Manafort convicted on 8 counts. And then the subheadline is, the trial was the first public test of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into possible Russian meddling. Whoa. So if this was the first, they got convicted on 8 counts, and this was the first trial, was the first public test of Robert Mueller's investigation into possible Russian meddling. Well, it sounds pretty successful. Everyone's saying that this is really validating it. Well, in fact, it says it in the article. It says he was convicted on 5 counts of tax fraud, 1 count of failure to file a report on foreign bank and financial accounts, and 2 counts of bank fraud. A mistrial was declared in 3 counts of failing to file reports on foreign bank and financial accounts and 7 counts of bank fraud and bank fraud conspiracy. So this is what they got him on: tax fraud and bank fraud. Now, I don't know if you watch this show or a regular viewer to this show, but what we've been saying since day one of this investigation is that, yes, of course, Donald Trump and his minions are corrupt, just like most people in D.C. and Wall Street. They're corrupt. And if you put a special prosecutor on them, you're going to find normal corruption. But I don't understand how this validates the first public test of Mueller's investigation into Russian meddling, because none of this is about Russian meddling. None of it. This is about bank fraud and tax fraud that happened before this guy ever worked for Trump. How could that be the subheadline? This is the first public test of Robert Mueller. This is exactly what we said. Yes. And if you put a special prosecutor on anybody in Washington, D.C., they're going to find crimes.
Okay. So what is he saying there? Well, first of all, I disagree that the president is ultimately corrupt simply by virtue of the fact that he's a politician, because he wasn't a politician all along. But this guy, Jimmy Dore, says all of the people on Wall Street, this is his opinion. If you're on Wall Street, if you're in the financial industry, if you're in banking, if you're in Washington, D.C., whether you're working as a politician or a think tank wonk, you know, everybody who has any connection to those arenas in our, and of course, politics, he says they're all corrupt. He says that's why they did away with the special prosecutor investigation originally after the Clinton special prosecutor, because they didn't get Clinton on what the original charge. They got him on lying to them about the affair with the intern. And that's what they impeached him for. And so this is a similar situation where they brought the special prosecutor thing back. They've got Trump under the microscope, and he's saying it's not just him. It's any person that you investigate, you're going to find they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, because that's the nature of the beast in Washington, D.C. It's full of corrupt people, and they're all special prosecutor on any person you find corruption. I don't think it goes that far where you could say any, like 100%. But I think you would find a higher level of corruption of people who are entrenched in Washington, D.C. than you would in the general population. Like you just take 1,000 random people from Missouri, 1,000 random people from Montana, and 1,000 random people from Arkansas, and then take 1,000 random people from Washington, D.C. You're probably going to find more corruption in the D.C. group just because they have more access, and because more people would be attempting to corrupt them to get something out of them that they want than they would some person who lives in Montana and is a rancher, or some Missourian who, raises cattle or pigs or works at a bank here. Less access to power and people who have power. So then he brings this other bit of audio, and so first off, let's first, he's talking about, when he says this article that he's talking about a piece over at NBC News where they hide the truth inside of the article. So you have to go down about 6 paragraphs to find the truth in the article. And what's important about this is the title of the piece. It's Manafort convicted on 8 counts, mistrial declared on 10 other charges. And it's an NBC News online piece. And then the subheading to that piece is, the trial was the first public test of special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into possible Russian meddling and obstruction of justice by Trump. Well, here's the problem with that. It's not the first test, because there was no collusion that was actually a part of either of those trials. Neither of those trials covered anything that had to do with the president directly, like him ordering anything directly, other than Cohen, who's flipped, so how trustworthy is he, saying that he was told to pay the 2 women for the supposed affairs to keep them quiet, and they're counting that as some kind of election violation when people are paid off all the time for their silence. That happens all the time, and it's not a crime when it happens then. And it actually invalidates Mueller's investigation, because the IRS could have completed the investigation into Manafort. Most of the crimes that he committed fall under the purview of the IRS. It didn't take a special prosecutor to prosecute Manafort. So it doesn't validate it at all. In fact, it's the opposite. So the subheadline is a lie. Now, as we go out, I want to listen to Dylan Radigan breaking it down on Clinton and Obama corruption, which Democrats coincidentally care nothing about. Okay, there's the music. We can't listen to that. What we'll do is we'll listen to it on the way back in from the next break, from this break right here. We'll listen to it on the way back in, and then we'll have our guest for you, our first guest of this hour, the president of the Culture of Life Africa. I can't wait to talk to her. Be right back.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, the very first day in Israel, when we're staying in Jerusalem, we go to the Mount of Olives. And it's there at the Mount of Olives we look out over the old city of Jerusalem. It's a spectacular sight. You've seen it in pictures before, but it's another thing to actually be there as we walk down from the Mount of Olives to the Garden of Gethsemane, and we pray there. It's going to be a wonderful time with brothers and sisters from around the country visiting the Holy Land, the land of Jesus. If you want information on this March 14th to the 22nd tour, just call us and we'll send you a brochure. Call 1-800-FAMILIES, F-A-M-I-L-I-E-S, option 5, and leave us your name and your address and we'll mail you a brochure. Or if you want to simply go online at twholyland.com, everything's there. twholyland.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I saw this report one evening on the news. There had been heavy rains for several days, so the rivers and streams were beyond their capacity. The old drainage system under the city streets simply couldn't hold the volume of water. They showed this picture of a parked car that had been swallowed by a huge sinkhole. The street collapsed because of a weak, damaged drainage system. As I thought about that, I also thought about the pathways of our lives. They collapsed too, because of the sinkholes in our hearts. Here's the deal. Sin is under the surface. When someone acts on a sin, when they tell a lie or commit adultery or steal something or they say something inappropriate and mean-spirited, it's not just the action. What produced the action is the collapse of our hearts. It's under the surface. This is the principle when Jesus spoke about adultery in Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 28. Listen to these direct words from the Master. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks on a woman to lust for her has committed adultery with her in his heart. Jesus was telling the religious leaders of his time and the people listening to him, look, it's about the intentions of the heart. What's going on underneath the surface? Don't simply focus on actions. Cultivate a righteous heart. That's the message of these words. You sin long before you take action. That's what Jesus said. It's not just doing something that is wrong and evil, in this case, sexual sin. The sexual sin takes place as a desire and intention of your heart. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Guard and strengthen your heart and mind so that you won't be sucked into sin's sinkhole.
Crawford Loritz is senior pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and
what we all
Urban
know about
Family
corruption,
Talk.
Dylan Radigan's going to break it down right now.
So, again, while the FBI director example gives those with a partisan view against Donald Trump, and it's easy to be against Donald Trump, the obvious fuel to suggest that he's a criminal who's a terrible guy, blah, 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 under investigation, probably true. But if you believe that, then you probably also need to consider that Hillary Clinton was taking money through her foundation to do weapons deals overseas while personally enriching herself, and that Barack Obama is paid off by the private health insurance companies and the banks to make sure that we don't actually have proper health care or a functioning financial system. It's hard to believe one and not accept the other two.
They're all corrupt. Do I have to sit here and show you every headline about Barack Obama goes from the White House to Wall Street in less than a year? Do I have to show you that? Barack Obama's cabinet cashing in on Wall Street. Timothy Geithner now working for predatory lenders. Predatory. Do I really have to show you that? Do I have to show you Debbie Wasserman Schultz with the predatory lenders also? Do I have to the corruption that's embedded in our politics? So that's why they got rid of the special, and now it's back, and now they're finding a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with the Russian.
Nothing to do with it. So it's a nothing burger. We know it's a nothing burger. The question is, how much longer do we have to deal with it? We'll see, and we'll get into a little bit more of that with, our guests. But right now, we're going to be speaking with Obianuju Ekeocha. She's the founder and president of Culture for Life Africa, author, pro-life speaker, and she's been on the show before, and we so enjoyed our time together then. It's great to speak to you again. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Stacey, for having me on, and I'm really, really excited.
I'm excited because I actually happened to catch a tweet of yours where some person was questioning your blackness because of your pro-life stance. Now, you're laughing because you know you had his lunch. So you not only had his lunch, you had his dinner and all of his meals for the next 3 weeks because you did not tear into him in traditional Twitter fashion, because most people go wild on Twitter. They have these knockdown, drag-out fights. It gets really, really nasty. You simply told him who you were, where you come from, where you grew up, and where you will be buried. Could you share that with us real quick before we jump into the full story here?
Right. Yeah, I was hoping that you didn't see that.
I saw it, and I loved it.
Retweet, so it's a little bit hard to me.
I loved it.
So last week, I was commenting to Netflix. You know what? That was, I think, what got me quite bothered, is that I was commenting to Netflix about what a lot of us might know, that Netflix had signed up this comedian, or suppose that comedian Wolf, I think it's Michelle Wolf, who had made some nasty jokes, and she had made abortion jokes, and they signed her up for an entire season of show, and many of us complained, at least I know on Twitter, a lot of us on Twitter, we complained about it, especially pro-life people were saying somebody who had made jokes about abortion should not be given a show on Netflix. So shortly after, Netflix had to make an announcement to say that they were canceling the show, and the show wasn't going to make it to the next season. So again, I took to Twitter, and I was saying, just to Netflix, right, not to nobody else but Netflix, saying, this is what happens when you don't listen to people. Many of us complained about this lady, and then now you've taken her on. Now, shortly after, you're forced, because probably there wasn't enough viewership to keep up the show, and now you're having to cancel. But from nowhere, this man, this guy from America, I think he's probably African-American, but he came at me and said, it's not about conservatives. And the first part of his tweet was about the show just being canceled for something else other than what I was thinking. Fine. I would have been fine with that. Everybody gets to have their own opinion. It's not a problem. But then he had to end it by saying, oh, by the way, he said, you are a joke of a black person.
Which I thought was so insulting and so ridiculous. But instead of going back at him, I could think of a million different things you could say. You went back at him. It was so calm and very much an educational process for him, but it still stung very much for him because he really thought he had you there.
Yeah, I think so, but thank God for that, because I'm hoping that at least through the public forum of Twitter, we can actually learn to converse, right? It's not like I wasn't angry. I could have said so many other things. When I saw how he insulted me and I wasn't talking about race. I wasn't talking about anything, that even had to do with race at all. So his inappropriate comment just made me want to lash out, but thank goodness, I think it was a better approach just to say, I am a Nigerian, born and bred in Nigeria, bred up in Nigeria. I can speak my traditional language, explain the traditions of my people, but I know also that I'll be buried next to my ancestors, right, in Nigeria, in Igbo land, where I come from, among the people of my tribe and among the people of my clan. And I asked him, so who are you? Where'd you come from?
Mm-hmm. Who's your tribe?
So hopefully that should teach him just a little bit. We don't don't go out, and I think that goes for every one of us. We don't go out and question one's identity, especially racial identity. You have no right to say that. And even he could have been, I was even thinking, he didn't even, how do we say this? In Nigeria, he would be someone like a mixed race, right? So, because I had looked at the picture and I thought, hold on, this guy is not like mixed race. But even I don't have a right to say to him, you're not black enough. Or you don't say that to people. You don't say that to people. So why do you think that looking at my name that nobody can still pronounce because it's so African? Looking at my picture, if you look a little bit at my timeline, you see I'm all about Africa. Where does this guy get off telling me that I'm a joke of a black person?
When you're in fact,
person, who am I?
it's astounding. And so, piggybacking off of that, Obi, I want you to talk a little bit about, because I think one of the things that has happened in America because of politics is that Black Americans feel we don't have this history that you have. You have a very proud history that you know it, you claim it, you're very open about it. And when someone questions you, you don't hesitate to let them know, wait a minute, I know who I am. I know where I come from. And so we Black Americans have that same pride of history in America. And that comes from, and I've always known this, but I've heard it put so succinctly by Ann Coulter in one of her books. She talked about the shared history of white and Black Americans because of slavery. And so slavery is not something that we're proud of, but it is a part of our history. Right. And because of slavery, Black Americans share a history with white Americans that is unique to us in this country. So what we do is we throw that away when we call ourselves African Americans, because many of us, like myself, I've never been to Africa. So it's not that we don't want to be a part of Africa. It's that we have a shared history that goes back for generations here that we need to claim. So my question to you is, how do we, in the context of, first of all, the pro-life ethos, which is very much what you expounded when you told him who you were. You couldn't claim all of that and, be buried with your ancestors if Africa had a kind of idea of life that is prevalent in the West today, because there'd be much fewer of the people in your family, and that would be something that harms your generational, you get to pass down your legacy. You can't do that when you have abortion ravaging the family tree. So how do we as Black Americans become as strong in our history as you are in yours as a Nigerian woman?
Right. So in Nigeria, I was brought up, by the society, the community where I came from. We believe so much in family, bloodlines and things like that, that we carry not just our own lives, but we carry the legacy of the parents and grandparents and great-grandparents before us. But also the same goes for, I think, Black Americans as well, because it doesn't matter that you are in America, you are Americans. You still come from somewhere. You didn't just show up. You still have your lineage going back generations, right? Mm-hmm. Wherever, even if your ancestors were brought, unfortunately, in chains and as slaves, but they still remain. The power of, the strength of what was within their bloodlines is what you carry. That's what African Americans carry, and that connects you all the way back for generations. Now, think about this. Every child, we're talking about ancestral, lineage. It's going to the past, but it's also the descendants, right? And if we are thinking that of our humanity that way, we are also thinking in the future. But what is more in the future than a baby in the womb, right? So a baby in the womb is also carrying the bloodlines of these parents of yours and your grandparents and your great-grandparents and people who have suffered and gone through so much. Is it then not a terrible tragedy that those bloodlines should be shed on the what I call the table of the abortionist, right? Isn't it a shame that the bloodlines of your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents who had so much hope in the generations, in their future generations, isn't it a tragic thing that the African-American communities are now being torn apart by, organizations like Planned Parenthood? That Planned Parenthood is not only aborting Black babies, but they are also shedding blood. They are shedding blood that should carry the legacy of generations passed. And it's an unfortunate thing, and I think it's something that the African-American community should rise up and walk away from. I've seen this walk away movement from the Democratic Party, but there should also be a walk away movement from this whole quote unquote pro-choice ideology, because the pro-choice ideology is antithetical, and it's in fact against something like the belief of the bloodlines that go from generations past to the generations in the future.
So, Obi, that was so beautifully put, and I believe that something, it has to be that we decide to start teaching children this from, knee-high up. They have to begin to learn that their lives are important and that they're valuable and that they're a part of our shared American history here in this country, and that when you say bloodlines, it creates a mental picture of something that's unbroken, which means in order for it to be unbroken, we can't bow down to the god of abortion and sexual convenience and all of that. We have to really respect those bloodlines and take care of them. And my hope and my prayer is that we will begin to teach this method of thinking of ourselves to our children, and not just for Black Americans, for any American who is raising a child right now. We have a unique heritage as the people of this nation that we want to preserve, and the way to do that is not to allow Planned Parenthood and individual abortionists who also contribute 600,000 or so abortions a year to the total to rob us of that. And that comes from the pit of hell, and that's why we have to fight against it. That and the fact that we're robbing ourselves of something that's so beautiful, the ability of my grandchild to say, this is who I come from. I know who my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents are, which I actually do. My aunts on both sides of my family, my husband's aunt, and then my mom's, she's my mom's aunt, but she's my aunt too. And then another aunt on the other side, on my dad's side, they've all traced our history back to basically the moment we appeared on American soil. And it is amazing to see that. Yeah, so I know it's the truth that not only am I an American, but that this is where I'm from, and there's nothing wrong with knowing that and then respecting it, as opposed to what we're kind of seeing now. And it's all from the enemy, really. It is.
It is. And for every child killed through abortion, executed in abortion, we it's like spitting on the grave, if I can say that, like spitting on the grave of the ancestors, because the generations, I don't think anyone would, in their right mind, when you're thinking of your grandchild or your great-grandchildren, the ones you probably will not see, 5 generations down, you would never be thinking perhaps some of them will be aborted. Perhaps one of my great-great-granddaughters would get pregnant one day, she could have an abortion due to choice. No, whenever we are thinking about our future generations, even you as yourself, right, as Stacey, 5 generations from you, your hope is that those children will all bear something from you. They will get a bit of your legacy. That means essentially that you're hoping that all of them, even subconsciously, you're hoping that all of them will leave. All of them would get to leave, at least to be born, at least to live out their destinies. And that means that abortion has no place whatsoever in our family lines. Abortion has no business in anyone's genealogy or anyone's family line, because it breaks off, if we're honest, even for those who call themselves pro-choice. Put abortion anywhere in your family tree or your family genealogy, it does nothing but break branches. So it has no business whatsoever being there. And if we're thinking about this holistically, and we're thinking about this, with the vision of God, in fact, that this should be a complete tree, a complete family tree, then that means that we should protect life, even when we're not alive. We should protect this idea that human beings should be allowed to be born and should be allowed to live out their lives.
Absolutely. So, Obi, I know you came on today to talk about Strings Attached. It's a film. I'm on the website right now. The website is stringsattachedfilm.com. We have about a minute left. Tell us about this project.
It's not yet out, so I'm hoping I come back again on your show to talk about it. Strings Attached is a documentary that I have just made. It's not out till January. I think the release date is January 19th, 2019, so a day after the March for Life in D.C. And it's a documentary I've made about the story of the Western countries and how they fund things like abortion in African countries. So I have interviews from the West as well as interviews from different African countries. And it's going to be just a little bit under an hour long, so it's not too long, but it's feature length all the same. So everybody can go see it at stringsattachedfilm.com and get a good idea. You can look at the gallery, you can see some of the pictures we took on set, but it's a fantastic project, and I'm really grateful to have been able to be a part of it with all the people who have contributed to this documentary to make it a reality. So now we have it all ready, and it will be shown at, hopefully, the British Parliament sometime in October. We are yet to get a full confirmation of that, but it's really the story of Africa and the West.
Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to look into can we have a screening here. I'm going to check that out, and you will be back on, Obi, to talk about this. Thank you so much for your time today. I can't wait to talk to you again, my sister in Christ. Thank you for your time today. All right, we'll be back with more right after this.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Michael Westbrook was a gifted wide receiver for the Washington Redskins and Cincinnati Bengals during an 8-year NFL career. He had succeeded at every level of football. Then at a relatively young age of 30, he retired and became active in mixed martial arts. Why? Because apparently he never even liked football, but felt he needed to play because it was expected of him. Many of us have experienced the expectations of others, but God made you the unique person you are. If your dreams develop in the process of seeking God's will and fit within His purposes, follow them. He wouldn't have given them to you if they were not important.
Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. The state of Utah authorizes concealed carry permitted gun owners to bring lawfully owned concealed weapons on college campuses. At the University of Utah, a graduate assistant decided to punish gun owners with a new rule in the class syllabus. Gun owners must stand at the back in a taped-off area with no desk. According to the syllabus, the act of bringing a gun to class is absurd, antisocial, and frightening behavior that requires a student to stand without a desk in a taped-off 3x3 square in the rear of the classroom. 2 students shared their horror on Facebook after the first day of class. Since that reporting, the spokesperson for U of Utah has rescinded the policy, and the graduate assistant has been assigned to non-teaching duties. It is stunning how often the left-leaning people of America attempt to outright break the law in their efforts to prove their moral superiority on guns. Meanwhile, lawful gun owners utilize firearms to defend themselves from assailants 3.5 million times per year. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
From America's election headquarters.
I'm Jessica Rosenthal in Arizona, where it is primary day, and Democratic voters here in Phoenix see a lot of opportunity.
I really, truly think that there will be a handoff to the Democrats.
Republican Jeff Flake is retiring from his Senate seat. Kristen Sinema is making a push on the Democratic side to turn that seat blue. 3 Republicans, though, are fighting for it, including Joe Arpaio, Kelly Ward, and Martha McSally. McSally left her House seat, District 2, to run for Senate, and now Democrats see that House seat as a big opportunity as well, with voter registration in that district just about evenly split.
Florida Democrats are expected to nominate U.S. Senator Bill Nelson for another term. He's one of NASA's biggest supporters.
In Florida, we don't just reach for the stars, we travel to them. I know. I flew on the space shuttle.
But Republicans are likely to send outgoing Governor Rick Scott to challenge him. Scott was the outsider when he became governor.
I never planned to fit in, and I won't fit in Washington either.
In Miami, Eben Brown, Fox News.
This is Stacey on the Right with Stacey Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
All right, welcome back to the show. So great to talk to Obi Ekeocha on the show again. I think it's one thing when we talk about the pro-life issue as Americans from our perspective. It's another thing when we hear from someone who's in a country where we have just taken upon ourselves to export abortion. We just take it over there and drop it off. We, set up an abortion center and then start teaching African women that they're getting pregnant too much and they need to have abortions because that's the way to prosperity. We actually do that as a country. And it's a shame. It's something that we should all feel very, just like, why are we doing that when we borrow so much money every day just to run our bloated government? Why would we borrow some of it so we can send abortion to Africa? Those women don't need abortion. They need for their government to start to operate under a capitalistic bent. A capitalist society is going to have a lot more opportunity for these women and for the men in their lives and for these families. We already do. Our Christian society, the Christian part of our society already sends missionaries and church plants and things like that, medicines. We already do all of that. But why are we exporting abortion? It's as if we're saying we have vaccines and we have medicine for you, and we also have this dastardly evil thing over here as well. Have some of all of it. It's like a buffet of good things, and then there's one big, huge bad thing on it, and we're like, don't forget to get some of that too. It's crazy. So I don't want that to be our legacy, but it is our legacy right now, and the only way to change that is to change the people that we're sending to Washington, D.C. They have to be pro-life. Who cares what their title is? They have to be pro-life. They have to be people that believe that all human life is sacred and important. So we were talking about Lanny Davis yesterday, and we mentioned him also again on the show during that audio clip from Jimmy Dore's show where he was talking about Dylan Ratigan and the Russian collusion. And if you missed the story, or I just want to kind of close this loop, you got Lanny Davis saying he doesn't know whether President Donald Trump has advanced knowledge of Russian hacks of Democrats. Now, he, previous to that, as an unnamed source, said that he did know that the president had advanced knowledge of the Russian hacks of the Democrats. The problem is the hacks weren't done by Russians. WikiLeaks has already said that it wasn't the Russians who hacked the DNC. So Russians bought ads on Facebook. Russians played influence games, but Russians did not hack the DNC. It was hacked, but it wasn't the DNC. WikiLeaks would cease to exist if they were ever found to be peddling stuff that they couldn't verify. That's a part of what WikiLeaks does, is they verify the sourcing and then they leak out the information. If for them to come out and say it wasn't the Russians, it's not the Russians. We don't have to worry about their veracity because their record is clean thus far. So you got Lanny Davis. He's an attorney for Michael Cohen. He's also out of Clinton world. Not a little out of Clinton world. He's deeply embedded in Clinton world. So during interviews, he said, just a couple days ago, he lays out this grave allegation against Trump, saying that Cohen had information that would be of interest to special counsel Robert Mueller. And he also said that the information that he had was about the Russian hacking of the Democrats' emails. But then he also said, when he was speaking on MSNBC's Rachel Maddow program, that Cohen, a former lawyer for Trump, had knowledge about the computer crime of hacking and whether or not Mr. Trump knew ahead of time about the crime or even cheered it on. Now remember, Donald Trump didn't say during the debate that he was going to hack, that the Russians should hack the emails of Hillary Clinton. He said 33,000 emails have been deleted. If the Russians could find them, they should give them back, and we would all be very grateful for that. So if emails have been deleted and, kind of sent out into the ether, and they're found, then that means there was no hacking involved. So the president, when he was a candidate, never asked the Russians to hack. The president asked the Russians to, if they could find the 33,000 deleted emails, to return them. So this is huge. And the reason it's huge is because we see just how far the media has gone to lie about what the president has said. And they don't just lie about it and it's like one or two outlets. They lie in a very coordinated fashion in order to bring about the kind of result that they want, which is deranged people on Twitter saying that any person who ever, believes anything that isn't from the Washington Times or the Washington Post or the New York Times, all the lies that they spread, if you don't believe those, then you're the one who's deranged. You're the one who doesn't have the correct information. When the fact is, they've been lying and covering over their tracks like just constantly. That's it. That it has been an never-ending saga of that. So then you have, in another interview, Lanny Davis of Clinton Extraction has information that would be of interest to Mr. Mueller in his probe of a conspiracy to corrupt American democracy, very similar to the indictment of the 12 Russians. But the indictment of the 12 Russians didn't have anything to do with Donald Trump either. So the indictment that has been, well, there were charges against Michael Cohen. Those didn't have anything to do with collusion or, Russians or anything like that. It was all about this payment to the two women. All of the allegations that were brought against Manafort, same deal. Manafort is bringing about this. It's a prosecution that's based solely upon the fact that he was once Donald Trump's campaign manager, but it has nothing to do with collusion or Russians, which was the original reason for the appointment of the special prosecutor. So everywhere we look, we see all of this falling apart. Davis is a close ally of Bill and Hillary Clinton. He also went on the record with Washington Post to reveal that he was an anonymous source for a story asserting that Cohen was willing to tell Mueller that he witnessed Trump approving of the June 16 meeting at Trump Tower with a group of Russians offering dirt on Hillary Clinton, which is also not a crime. Opposition researchers often reach out to campaigns offering information that they have on the opposing candidate. Having a meeting with them, no matter what their background is not a crime. In addition to that, we now have news breaking today that Hillary Clinton's email was actually broken into by the Chinese while she was the Secretary of State using the homebrew server. And here's the most crucial part of that story. They actually put something on her email, a code, that allowed them to receive her emails as she received them and receive copies of the outgoing emails as she sent them. While she was Secretary of State, she emailed classified information from that homebrewed server that the Chinese had a copy of every single bit of it. And they had it the whole time. She was emailing the President of the United States and he was emailing her back. She was emailing her subordinates at the State Department. She was emailing any person in any governmental agency that needed something from her that emailed her and she emailed them back. The Chinese have copies of all of those ingoing and outgoing messages. Why we're still talking about Donald Trump instead of talking about her is it's kind of crazy. It's a double standard and it's kind of ridiculous. Now, I'm not sure what's going on. We're still waiting on our guest call in for today. I have not had a cancellation for today. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen with that. But right now, since we have some time and we normally take calls during this segment, if you'd like to call in, 866-963-2037. I have a ton more to cover over here in my stacks of information for today's show, but I wanted to give you a chance to weigh in since we don't have our guest right now, and this is usually when we take calls. So 866-963-2037, and we can kind of, I'm just sending a little quick email here about our guest. We can talk about it if you'd like to. So another bit of breaking news is about pumpkin spice latte. So if you are like me and you enjoy the taste of pumpkin spice or pumpkin flavored things, real pumpkin, not just the flavor, like pumpkin muffins, pumpkin pancakes, et cetera, then you would be excited to know that Starbucks, off again, Starbucks, has just brought back pumpkin spice today instead of waiting until the end of September, beginning of October. So they brought it back early. And one of the things that we're excited about with this is that it's causing a furor on Twitter. So I had tears stream down my face a little bit ago. I was on Twitter and I was looking at the tweets about all of the drama that's going on, because some people are actually enraged that the pumpkin spice is back early because they hate pumpkin spice. Now, I don't know what would possess you to be angry that a certain kind of food is available that you don't like, because you don't have to eat it. It's not like we're in a torture session here where you're being force-fed the food. But other people are just giddy over it, like me. I'm absolutely excited because that means that we can enjoy, if you will, the pumpkin spice right now, which is so exciting. But if you're excited about it, like me, I was just laughing because everyone is tweeting things like memes of babies dancing about the stock market being up and also pumpkin spice. Like, what else could you want in life besides those things? And I got to say, I'm pretty happy that it's back. Now, I'm also happy because it's Dunkin' Donuts. They have to match what they're doing. Dunkin' Donuts is also bringing back their pumpkin spiced items, and they have a bunch of stuff. Like, they have these pumpkin spice waffles, some kind of donuts, of course. I'm not eating those. And then they also have their pumpkin spice coffee that they sell. But one of the creamer companies has pumpkin spice creamer, and they have a recipe for making your own pumpkin spice latte at home using their creamer and some other ingredients, and that's the one I'm going to be using. Not because I don't drink coffee out, but because I need to cut back on the Starbucks now that the oldest has gone off to college. Because, you guys know I'm not in favor of Starbucks. I'm not a huge fan of them simply because they are really anti-friendly to gun owners. And we will be, in the last segment of the show, we'll be talking about, there's this big stat that's out that says there were 235 school shootings in the 2015 to 2016 school year, and people are using that stat a lot. I've even seen it misquoted as 213 or 235 school shootings just since January of this year to now. These are not true statistics. It's not true. And so what I'd like to do is debunk that, and we will when we get back in the next segment, or actually it'll be the third segment of the second hour. Let's go to the phones. Bob from Ohio, thanks for calling the show today.
Yeah, how are you?
Good.
You there?
Yes, I am. What's your comment?
Hello? Okay. Yeah, I was just, it's funny, I run this through my head also. Why isn't Hillary being investigated, blah, blah, blah. And I just think the deep state's sold out. A lot of the Congress people are sold out. President Obama, corresponded with Hillary on that server. And that's kind of old news that Louis Gohmert had talked about that in the hearing. And why all of a sudden is it breaking news? I guess my question. But I had a comment from yesterday. I guess I wasn't able to get through about, I wish, what Rush Limbaugh said about President Obama failing, and, I agreed with that. And I agreed with the Clintons failing. I think the only thing that Bill Clinton did was welfare reform that I'd agreed with. But and he had made a comment, your guest yesterday, about flying a plane. You don't want the pilot to fail. Well, if you're heading towards a mountain and you're going to slam into the side of the mountain, well, yeah, I want that pilot to fail and not pilot that ship. And I feel the same way about the country,
Yeah, I understand that too. Thank you so much for calling the show. Jake from Arizona, you have like 30 seconds. What's your comment?
Hello.
Hi. What's your comment?
I'm from BB, Arkansas, not Arizona.
Oh, okay. All right. From Arkansas. Thank you so much for calling.
Yes, ma'am. The thing about me is I teach Bible class, and I was teaching on racism, and this one lady, I said, who know anybody that's a racist? She said, Donald Trump. And I said, all right, explain why Donald Trump is a racist. People don't get it. he said because he don't treat his wife right. Or I said, if somebody treats women bad, I said, that's a male chauvinist. That's not racism. And so I am a man of color. So they tells me that I'm wrong for voting for Donald Trump, and people give me a hard time. So I'm a preacher, and my whole congregation is white, except me and my 2 grandkids. And people don't understand that. But what I want to say is that Russia did not have influenced me to vote for Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton caused me to vote for.
Amen to that. Thank you so much for calling the show. That's the end of Hour 1. We'll be back with Hour 2. Go to urbanfamilytalk.com to live stream us. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay there.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Vice President Mike Pence called the Values Voter Summit the greatest gathering of conservative, pro-family Americans in the nation. The Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C. is September 21st through the 23rd. Sponsored in part by AFA Action, the summit will encourage and equip you to preserve America's republic. Learn more and register at valuesvotersummit.org. That's valuesvotersummit.org.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty P. A new trade deal has been struck between the U.S. and Mexico that President Trump says will replace the North American Free Trade Agreement. Mexico's Foreign Minister, Luis Videgaray, discusses the agreement with Fox's The Ingram Angle.
It's really significant. I think it's a breakthrough, and it shows that 2 countries can actually get together and do a good deal for both of them that is reciprocal, that is fair, and will allow growth on both sides.
Florida voters head to the polls today to pick nominees for high office. Republican Adam Putman, currently the state's Commissioner of Agriculture, is hoping to be his party's pick for governor. Putnam says the nation has a vested interest in seeing who comes out on top in the Sunshine State.
I'm the candidate who can win the primary and win the general and keep Florida in conservative hands to make sure that the 3rd largest state in the country is hitting on all cylinders so that we can help make America great.
More than 3 million Floridians cast early ballots in today's primary. How invasive is data mining? Laura Engel takes a look.
Securing America.
Fordham University law professor Joel Reidenberg has been researching the practice of student data mining for nearly 3 years.
It's usually pitched as fill this out and we'll give your name to colleges that are going to be interested in you.
Answers given when students fill out college application surveys are unknowingly being shared with data mining companies and then sold or shared again with third-party companies. Alice Linehan's daughter took a survey 2 years ago while taking the SAT test and says they're still getting an onslaught of unsolicited mailers. The Department of Education says the surveys are optional and hope that parents will encourage their kids to be cautious about the personal information they are giving out. In New York, Laura Engel, Fox News.
A Massachusetts university appears to be exposing its bias by allowing a course that promotes Palestinian political ideology while painting Israel as illegal colonists. Bob Kellogg has details.
The course is titled Colonizing Palestine and will be taught by anti-Israel activist Thomas Aboud. Tammy Rosman Benjamin of the pro-Israel group AMCA says applying the term colonialists depicts Israel as the embodiment of evil.
That's what colonialism studies is all about. It's about painting certain groups and certain countries, in this case, as being evil and, oppressors, and the other countries that they have colonized as being the oppressed.
Benjamin says AMCA, along with Stand With Us and the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America, have condemned Tufts for offering this course.
Do I believe that this course is not a legitimate academic offering? I do think that. I do think that there's a good chance, just given all of the indications and the red flags that we're seeing, I do think that there's every good chance that this course doesn't have academic integrity.
Campus Reform is reporting that pro-Israel students at Tufts are also condemning the course, saying it could devolve into anti-Israel propaganda. I'm Bob Kellogg.
Some people believe a new type of cell phone tower may cause brain cancer. Joy Piazza reports.
This is House Call for Health. A group of doctors in Europe and some advocates here in the U.S. are warning that a new generation of cell phone towers using 5G technology will significantly increase the risk of brain tumors. The advocates say 5G towers will need to be in far more locations than current cell towers, and radiation will be everywhere. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says some studies of workers exposed to high magnetic fields show higher rates of cancer, but they say they need more information before they can say one way or the other whether 5G towers pose a health risk. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health, I'm Joy Piazza, Fox News.
Global shares were mostly higher Tuesday after the White House said it reached a preliminary agreement with Mexico on replacing NAFTA. Benchmark U.S. crude oil slipped but remains just under $69 a barrel. The dollar inched down against the yen and fell against the euro. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and on the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fool because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, should have just said, we think this guy is a sleaze. There must be something there. And now we have Manafort and 17 very talented prosecutors who are also liberal Democrats just searching for crimes of anyone around Donald Trump.
You know, the whole thing raises more suspicion that the FBI politicized these investigations during the election, and it just begs for an outside independent prosecutor to go back through this evidence, through these emails, and see if the FBI was trying to cover up material evidence in this case.
To me, the headline would be Manafort convicted of a bunch of stuff that have nothing to do with Russian collusion.
It should be an Onion headline,
right?
2-year investigation and tons of resources and tons of money reveals white-collar people shady.
Yeah.
And now, Stacey Washington.
All right. Welcome back to the show. This hour, we're going to be speaking with Carman, Grammy Award-winning Christian music artist. He sold 10 million plus albums in his career. He's going to be coming on and talking about his upcoming free concert tour and why he's not selling tickets to it, why he's not taking offerings at this tour. And so we're excited to speak with him. And right now, we're going to talk about the other breaking news from this week that is kind of, it's like people are just, I mean, who's shocked by this? I remember thinking, cast your mind back. It's the discovery of all of these extra Hillary Clinton emails that are on this laptop, 679,000, I think. And you've got Comey, who is then the director of the FBI. He's made this announcement that they're reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email. Now, you know he received such huge backlash after that. So less than 8 days later, they come back and they say, oh, I think it was like 3 or 4 days later, we're done. We've looked at all of the emails. We used a special email program, a program that was able to allow us to review all of these emails. We were able to quickly go through all of them. We did 12-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, and here we are 4 days later. It's done. Nothing to see here. Well, now it turns out that he lied to us, which calls into question his credibility yet again. And he lied to us because they didn't look at even 1% of them. They looked at around 3,000 emails, and there was a glitch that prevented them from looking at all of them using some program, but that's not even the point here. I don't believe very many Americans heard that and said, oh yeah, they were able to look at all the emails because they have special computer stuff. Nobody believed that. That's why she had such a dent in the poll numbers. So you've got Real Clear Investigations did a look at this. They're the ones who are breaking this news story. And it's Paul Sperry. He works at Real Clear Investigations. He says most emails on the Wiener laptop were never examined.
James Comey told Congress that they had reviewed all of the Clinton emails, hundreds of thousands that were found on the Wiener laptop, but that was not true. They barely looked at any of them. Just 3,000 out of 700,000 were actually individually examined.
Wait. They looked at how many?
3,000 out of potentially relevant 700,000 emails were actually individually examined for classified information and incriminating evidence.
So not only did he lie, but all of that email, all of that content that should have been gone over, resulting in an investigation, nothing. Poof. No big deal. We have to get back to investigating Trump. We have to get back to ensuring we have an insurance policy against this man actually being the president for 4 years. So Paul Sperry goes on to talk about how this computer glitch prevented this vaunted email program from actually doing its thing.
I was just going to mention that Peter Strzok, the disgraced agent who was in charge of this mid-year investigation of Clinton emails, he actually personally handpicked that 3,000 sample. And with 2 other investigators, they went through them all, supposedly, and pulled an all-nighter, ordered pizza, and said, nothing new here, case closed once again. He also swore under oath that he had this story that there was this miraculous breakthrough in technology that allowed the FBI to process the Wiener laptop for evidence rapidly. And turns out that doesn't pass the smell test. That didn't check out either. It turns out there was a technical glitch that thwarted that effort. And I was going to mention that, Jason, that when you were on oversight, you were probably wondering the same thing. How in the world could they get through this mountain of evidence in just days after Comey gave you the final all clear on Hillary?
I mean, so the all clear was fake. It was no all clear. She never should have run for the presidency, but she did so to prevent them from prosecuting her for this email. When she said, the future is female and this is my destiny and I feel like I was born to be the president of the United States, what she meant was, my future is an orange jumpsuit if I don't keep the political pressure on these neophytes, all of these suck-ups, these people who their entire lives revolve around worshiping the Clinton dynasty. They won't worship me so much anymore if they find out that 700,000 or so of my emails are on a laptop owned by someone who's been convicted of basically pedophilia. No. I can't have that happen. I've got to run for the presidency. I've got to have this campaign. In fact, why shouldn't I just be president? It's not just about running, but the running will insulate me from prosecution. We had a guest on that talked about this. You guys remember Hollywood guy who's written about this extensively. He wrote a column about how the Clintons will never go away because the minute they stop running and stop working in politics and raising money is the minute that people realize they should really be in jail. So here she is running the biggest scam of all time, a scam on the American people to prevent herself from being prosecuted. And it worked. It literally worked because you have people in the FBI like James Comey and others actually doing everything they can to protect her because they think she's going to be the president of the United States. If she hadn't been running, they would have said, oh man, 700,000 emails? They also would have been the ones to discover, instead of the Daily Caller News Foundation uncovering the information, it would have been the FBI who found out that the Chinese had copies of every single communication she made as a Secretary of State. It's a situation that really makes you wonder what they're doing. What is the FBI doing exactly? They're not doing their jobs. Honestly, what's the point of the whole thing? So I believe we have a caller. Let's go to the phones. Malcolm from Florida. Hey, thanks for calling the American Family Radio Network and Urban Family Talk. Oh, he dropped out. So sorry about that. If you want to call back in, please do 866-963-2037. It's a situation that makes it very difficult for us to trust anything that they say. The dereliction on all of the different investigations. They let the Pulse nightclub shooter go. They let the guy who did the shooting at the Texas. It was a workplace violence according to Barack Obama, but it was this Muslim guy who shot up his workplace and he was on active duty in the military down in Texas. They let him go. He'd been reported. The guy in, I believe it was the Northwest, he shot up his Christmas party at work. His wife he was already radicalized, went overseas to the Middle East and picked up, an Islamic jihad bride, brought her back to the United States. She further radicalized him and he shot up a Christmas party at work. These are terroristic incidences that didn't have to occur, acts of terrorism. They didn't have to happen had the FBI been doing its work. If they had done what they were supposed to do, their mandate, these things wouldn't have happened. And it's the same thing with this investigation into Donald Trump. It's not only is there no there's no legs, there's no feet, there's no hands, there's nothing to implicate the president in anything other than winning an election by focusing on winning states to win the Electoral College. In other words, actually accurately assessing what the game was. Isn't it something if you go into a poker game and you're playing Uno and you don't win the poker game, you lose all your money? It would be because you were playing Uno. You might have actually had a chance at winning the poker game had you actually played poker. Hillary Clinton was trying to win the popular vote. She stopped campaigning. She didn't visit some of the battleground states that were, according to polling, already hers. But she should have known they'd be close because Donald Trump had record-breaking crowds at all of his gatherings. He's still doing that. He's still going around the country when he has a rally. It's still packed to the gills. What people want to focus on is how the media are being treated back on the stand, not on how absolutely large, rabidly large those crowds are. They're energized. So it doesn't mean we can, people have to go out and vote. You can't take anything for granted. But the fact is, media types are not looking at what's happening in this country with clear eyes. They're convinced that, I had someone tweet me today, Donald Trump is a liar. He's told 2,300 lies or something like that. And then they had a link to a Washington Post story. Okay, so who believes the Washington Post on whether or not the president has told the truth? Not I. Just saying. You can say whatever you want. All right. Oh, Malcolm from Florida called back. Malcolm, thank you so much for calling the show.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well.
Okay. I wanted to talk about, because you touched on this earlier, Michael Cohen's lawyer, who pretty much admitted that the entire fiasco of Donald Trump knowing that there was a meeting at his tower, he pretty much admitted that this was BS. But what's really getting me is that CNN is actually proudly saying how they don't care if it's real or fake, they're going to stick behind it. So my thing is, the Jim Acostas of the world don't want us to call them fake news, but how could you not if they're going to go with the fake? That they know the story isn't real, and yet they're still going behind it. So how do we trust them?
Well, I don't trust them. I don't trust them. And I just encourage people, this is a situation where if we didn't know all of this, if these facts weren't readily available to us, Malcolm, then we would, hey, it would be not a big deal to believe what you're saying in the news. But we now know that almost the entire news apparatus in this country is all in the tank for the Democrats and for Hillary Clinton. So anything that you hear about the president or about Hillary Clinton has to be suspect. And then that kind of trickles down. They're also in the tank for Planned Parenthood. They're in the tank for, they were in the tank for the Russians until they hated them because Hillary Clinton told them to. They're in the tank for anti-American interests, for socialists. It gives us kind of a thing that we're facing as Americans, where you really have to search out your own news, or you have to trust large Christian organizations like American Family Radio. And even then, I never ask anybody to call in or listen to the show, and that's it. You still need to be reading your own news sources and testing it for yourself so that you can be absolutely certain. It's just disturbing that no one has, kind of a conscience where they're like, wow, I can't, this baby part thing. I mean, I was pro-choice, but this baby part thing, I can't get behind that. There's just no low that people are willing to draw a line at and say, okay, that's too far for me. And that's too bad. Thank you so much for calling the show. It's not okay. It's not okay. And we have options as to what we can do. And we talked about that a little bit yesterday on the show when we were talking about fasting. And I know I had a couple of people say, oh, thank you so much for that. And then what kind of fasting? Now, the Bible talks about fasting where there's no water, no food at all. And you can do that for half a day, a whole day, 3 days, 21 days, 40 days, whatever you feel led to do. But you can also fast. One of the toughest ones I used to do that's not tough anymore is I would fast television and social media, one or the other or both. Woo, it'll show you how much you're tethered to it. Fasting alcohol if you drink, fasting just food and just drinking only water. These all count. All right, we'll be right back with more after this. Stay there.
When I first found out I was pregnant, I was surrounded by fear and disbelief. My boyfriend told me at the time to get an abortion. There was no negotiating.
This is the story of a young lady who decided to keep her baby after hearing her baby's beautiful heartbeat on ultrasound. The Ministry of Preborn provides ultrasounds for pregnancy centers across America for free. When an abortion-minded woman hears her baby's heartbeat on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to keep her baby.
My son Rent turned 5 months this week, and even though there are still uncertainties in my life, the one thing I know is I get to watch him grow.
Your gift of $140 will cover the cost of 5 ultrasounds. All donations are tax deductible. To donate, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
A recent post on breadstate.com by someone with the identifier Surgeon67 caught my attention. It provides 4 important critiques of the current attempt to promote a single-payer, government-run healthcare plan using the title Medicare for All. The 4 points are regulations, rationing, cost, and right to health care. The discussion of regulations starts with this question. Have you ever seen a government program that didn't come with a stack of regulations that would make War and Peace seem like a birthday card rhyme? Government money comes with strings, and there isn't any evidence that all of those rules and regulations make the delivery of health care better. Rationing is certainly going to be part of a government-run program since the primary task will be to reduce cost. But if someone else is paying for it, you'll be less likely to cut costs. The only way that the government can keep down cost is to institute guidelines that explain who can qualify for those expensive medical tests. What about cost? One study estimates that Medicare for All will cost an additional $32 trillion over 10 years. Here is a simple request listed in the article. Tell me one government program that costs less than or equal to projections. No, take your time. I'll wait. It's possible that even that estimate is off by perhaps a factor of 2. The 4th point is the so-called right to health care. The surgeon says, I have never personally seen anyone denied care for anything life-threatening because they weren't covered. If someone had a ruptured spleen, we don't wait until the Visa card clears before we fix it, and we don't call Blue Cross for pre-certification. Medicare for All sounds nice until you begin to look into the details and what it will mean for you and your family. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We are back. Head over to afr.net and also urbanfamilytalk.com and check us out. We are doing fun things. We're so happy to have just the whole conversation going today. And, you know, there's another kind of breaking story. Again, I mean, so you've got the Cohen lawyer admitting he was the source for CNN's Trump Tower story and lied about it on the air. And then you have this FBI official saying that the Bureau leaked stories, then used them to get FISA warrants. And the media duping Americans with these so-called anonymously sourced stories, which now at this point, when I see it says it's an anonymous source, that used to be something that, you know, it would trigger intrigue and you'd read the story and think, wow, this is interesting. Now when I see it, I'm like, oh, just another pack of lies. I don't trust it at all. Not at all. I mean, I just don't trust it. So this next story is the same old. They're leaking these stories. So you've got new information suggesting our suspicions are true. FBI and DOJ have previously leaked info to the press, then used those same press stories as a separate source to justify FISA applications. Unreal. Tomorrow's Bruce Orr interview is even more critical. Did he ever do this? This is House Freedom Caucus Chairman Mark Meadows. He's a Republican in the House. That doesn't mean that he's above reproach, but he's definitely someone who he has access to classified information. The claim stems in part from FBI intelligence analyst Jonathan Moffa's Friday testimony behind closed doors before the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees. So these FISA warrants have got to be, there's something got to be done about them, because they're not even using them in a way that's above board. Not at all. They're not. They're just using them to get whatever they want. If they want a FISA warrant, they leak a story to the press. Just imagine you leak something to the press. It doesn't even have to be true. You could just make it up. Then you use that press story to get a FISA warrant on someone that you might want to investigate, whether you have the right to investigate them or not. A source with knowledge of the testimony initially told Fox News that Moffa said FBI personnel would use media reports based on information they leaked to justify applications for Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants, echoing Meadows. The source said Moffa, who worked with controversial FBI officials, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, acknowledged that this had been the practice in the past. So this is the practice. This is what they do. An FBI official pushed back, telling Fox News the initial claims about Moffa's testimony were incorrect. The source later clarified that Moffa testified the FBI routinely uses media material to corroborate their work product, including FISA materials, but never said directly we utilize FBI leaks for FISAs. The source maintained, however, that the FBI has a culture of leaking for their own gain and uses media reports to support their work. There's quite a bit of evidence raising concerns that the FBI engages in this without Moffa saying it. I mean, this is stunning. Republicans have long questioned to what extent leaked information related to the unverified anti-Trump dossier was used as a basis for surveillance warrants against former Trump advisor Carter Page in 2016. This is when the Bureau was led by James Comey and Deputy Andrew McCabe, which coincidentally, McCabe fired, Comey fired. Who else was getting, prepping and providing these FISA warrant applications? Strzok fired. Page, she separated herself, but she would have been fired too. So there's a more nuanced version of events provided by another source, and this is on Fox News. The source said to Fox News that Moffa claims the FBI keeps track of open source reports related to their cases. When asked whether a FISA application would reference a news account, he said it could be possible, hypothetically, but the FBI aims to find better information. So they aim to find better information. They aim to find. Are you with me in thinking that's just not good enough? It's the FBI. They aim to find better. How about if they just find information that is sourced and credible, and without it, they don't get it? No FISA application. Simply do not apply for a FISA application if you don't have the highest level of confidence in the information that you're presenting. These judges are like rubber stamp, empty-headed people. They're sitting there just approving these FISA applications based on, well, we think we have this, and then here's a couple of news stories about it. By the way, some of the people who are reporting these news stories, like that one's my girlfriend, or that's one that I had a relationship with. Remember the incestuous nature of some of these news reporters and the FBI. Some of these agents are literally in relationships with these reporters. So Meadows also told Fox News' America's newsroom earlier Tuesday that the committee had evidence of the FBI's practice that would be hard to refute. We know that some people at the Department of Justice and the FBI actually gave information to the media when the stories were reported. Then they used those reports to justify further investigations. You know, it's like saying we're going to incriminate on one hand and be the jury on the other, but it just doesn't work that way. Okay, so we have our guest. Our next guest is Carman, Grammy Award-winning Christian music artist. Carman, thanks for joining the show today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great. So you have an upcoming free concert tour. Can you tell us about it?
Well, let's see. We're probably doing about 40 cities, and we're doing something that I used to do a long time ago, which is opening up the doors and letting anybody come in who wants to come in. And it's definitely a venture of faith. I'm working with Feed the Children, so instead of taking offerings, I'll be helping to get sponsorships for children who have no water and food and hospitalization, things like that. So it just seems like the right thing to do, and I kind of always go with whatever I feel is the right thing to do, and it seems like it always works out.
Okay. So pivoting over to the current cultural and political climate, you have some thoughts on how Christians can manage our lives and within that current sphere?
Well, I don't think it's ever been this antagonistic, because I've lived through the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and everything in between, and I've never seen it where it's so, us against them, even on a personal level, at the kitchen table, at the grocery store. I've lost a lot of friends just in discussions over this election. Just even talking about it, it just creates such antagonism. And the only thing I could say is I would steer back to the scripture that says, if your coat offends your brother, just take it off. What's the big deal? If a certain conversation leads to a certain offense, no matter what it is, or no matter how right you feel, or how strongly you feel about your particular position, if that thing will offend somebody, then just delete it. Don't go there. Avoid it. And if they try to push you for your response, just do the best you can to avoid it, and treat all people as you would want to be treated yourself. Because I don't think that you're going to get into a conversation with someone on the opposing side where it's going to really turn out so well.
Yeah, it's true.
In this particular climate, anyway.
Well, that's true. And I have to say, you're describing how you just avoid the subject. And I recently said the same thing to someone who asked me, how do you deal with the dynamic with families where family members, they're politically opposite of you. They really hate the president and they want to talk about it all the time. And I said it's not worth it for the relationship to keep talking about it because you'll never convince them and they'll never convince you. So just don't talk about it. But It's really hard, Carman, not to talk about it when the person that's your family member constantly brings it up and constantly lobs attacks at Donald Trump and Trump supporters and calls Trump supporters racists. And, you know, it's like you, at some point, you just want to say, look, stop it. That's not true. And then that's when you get into a big, long, protracted argument about it.
Right. Now, it's obvious that President Trump is, he says things that, just causes all sorts of people to, the back of their hair, the hair on the back of their neck stand up, But he didn't come in as a politician, so he doesn't have that embedded rhetoric in his system on how to answer certain questions. I mean, this is a guy that spent most of his time in construction, so he's like a construction worker sometimes. He says things like a construction worker would say. But most of America is thinking something, and he just comes out and says it. Now, in the political context, that can be devastating because you're weighed by every little word you say. So people can build doctrines around a phrase, where most of America is looking for someone that is going to not say something right, but do something right. So they're unfocusing on the things that he says that are not like Obama would say it, or
right.
the eloquence of what he would say, but they want to see what he does. And that's what they voted in. They didn't want a politician anymore because we didn't trust the politicians. And I think he is 100% of who you thought he'd be. I don't think he's changed at all. I think he's adjusted a few things to try to accommodate, but he's 70 plus years old. I mean, who changes that much when you're past 50?
Thanks, because you know what, Carman? I said that right after the inauguration. He tweeted something out, and people were just losing their minds. And I said, I just don't think he's going to change and stop tweeting. And I don't think he's going to change the tenor of his tweets. I wish he would tweet, I can't change what he's already tweeting, but I wish he would add in more policy things, like when Jeff Sessions increased prosecutions of individuals who were felons, who were repeat offending with guns, and he increased prosecutions of that by like 300 and some %. And he was literally jailing bad guys faster than the DOJ could arraign them and convict them. They were just getting these people off the streets. And it's a huge turnaround from what the Obama administration was doing. I wrote a story about it, and I thought, it would be great if President Trump talked about this in Twitter. If he said, by the way, Americans are safer because Jeff Sessions is now increased gun prosecutions by this percentage. And oh, by the way, I don't like that one's hair or whatever it is that he's tweeting about. That'd be fantastic. But he tends to just do what he's always done, which is a lot of flame throwing on Twitter. And he's not going to stop doing that. 71-year-old people don't usually make huge about faces in their lives just because other people don't like what they're doing.
No, and that is how he got his audience in the first place. So that is by saying things no one else would say or think to say or dare to say. And he has followed that all the way down the line. I believe that he sounds more like the American public on the way they would say something, aside from the coasts, of course, but or what you would think to say, I wish somebody would just say this. And he just says it. And you're like, did he just say that? And we're like shocked that he would say the things that we're thinking about sitting in our living room, And I think people like the fact that we can hear what he's saying real time. I mean, we find these tapes from the Kennedy era, the lost tapes of JFK, and they're all about his conversations, with different people and who he was mad with and who he was ticked with. And it sounds like he's talking just like a real guy, and like I never heard JFK talk like this. However, if JFK would have tweeted those thoughts at the time, he was thinking them at that very moment, this guy's a jerk. What is he, nuts? Is he crazy? If he would say those things in real time, it would be very similar to like what we would hear like Trump would say. But Trump doesn't have that political status. He doesn't have that political polish. He's never been a politician. He wasn't groomed for it. And so this is the first time in history we're actually hearing what a president is thinking and saying, and thinking in his innermost thoughts, what he really feels in real time as he thinks it, as he says it. We've never had that before. And I think America loves it. Good or bad, they love the openness and the unpredictability of it. To a point, he's unpredictable. You know, you kind of can predict he's going to say what he's thinking, and that is just intoxicating for most people because you never really know what the politicians are really thinking by what they say.
I think
so
it's
this
kind
is
of
refreshing.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's totally refreshing, and it's something that I think the media just needs to get used to because it's not going to change. Carman, thank you so much. Upcoming free concert tour, all those locations. Looking forward to it. Grammy Award-winning Christian music artist. Thank you for being here today.
They can just go to carmantour.com. It's all there.
carmantour.com. All right. Thank you so much. We'll be back with more right after this.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Michael Westbrook was a gifted wide receiver for the Washington Redskins and Cincinnati Bengals during an 8-year NFL career. He had succeeded at every level of football. Then at a relatively young age of 30, he retired and became active in mixed martial arts. Why? Because apparently he never even liked football, but felt he needed to play because it was expected of him. Many of us have experienced the expectations of others, but God made you the unique person you are. If your dreams develop in the process of seeking God's will and fit within His purposes, follow them. He wouldn't have given them to you if they were not important.
Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
My name's Rodney. I've known about Teen Challenge a long time, but I wasted 5 more years drinking before I admitted that I needed this program. But here, I'm sober, and I learned it's never too late to turn things around.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Y'all have encouraged us to go out, stand for the Word of God, stand politically.
It's truly a blessing to hear how God is using Urban Family Talk.
Just want to say I love everything that Urban Family does.
Will you take a moment to share your story? Call 877-327-5647. That's 877-327-5647. Thanks.
Donald Trump's America.
President Trump says the U.S. has reached a new trade deal with Mexico, announcing what he called the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. In the Oval Office, the president said he intends to put an end to the 24-year-old North American Free Trade Agreement.
I'll be terminating the existing deal and going into this deal.
The president said he wants to get rid of the name NAFTA because he believes it has bad connotations. The Mexican president, speaking through a translator on speakerphone, congratulated the negotiators on both sides and expressed hope that Canada will sign on to a trade agreement.
President Trump put the screws on Canada, saying,
One way or the other, we have a deal with Canada. It'll either be a tariff on cars or it'll be a negotiated deal.
President Trump says it's possible a separate agreement could be worked out with Canada. Any new trade deal would need approval from Congress. The president has long been critical of NAFTA and has called it a job-killing disaster. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Well, the Senate has a much different map, and the map that they're playing is a much better map. House has a history against them where the party in power normally lose seats, meaning the party that has the White House. But there's 2 times that's been different. When you look at what this election is going to be about, it's going to be about results versus resistance, Pelosi's resistance. And look at what results we have economically. The last time there was a party in power that had economic growth at 4%, they actually gained seats. But take this one statistic. In the last 49 years of America, unemployment has only been below 4% 8 months. 8 months in 49 years.
Wow.
But 3 of those 8 months were this year.
Wow. 3 of those 8 months were just in this year. So the economy is roaring. And we need to be not only grateful about that, but we need to be working to ensure that we can maintain that type of growth because it pulls people out of poverty. An economy where there are a ton of jobs available and people have a lot of upward mobility, if it keeps up, if it keeps going, then individuals who are currently in jobs where they might like their job, but they need an opportunity to advance. And their skills are good and their work history is good. And now they're looking at their work and they're saying, wow, I've been here a couple years. I've been here a while, whatever the number is. And this is a great opportunity, but I might need to cast out my net and see if I can move up. And that is when, if they find something, in that moment where you go in and you say to your boss, I'm going to go ahead and submit my resignation. I found another opportunity and it's been such a pleasure to work here. And, I hate to go, but I need to branch up. That's when their boss might say, oh, wow, we can't lose you. What can we do? Why don't we promote you here? Why don't we give you a promotion and some job training? Or why don't we offer you, a certain amount of reimbursement, tuition reimbursement for something? And that can be a very exciting time for employees. Imagine that happening tens of thousands of times here in America because the economy is good and people will want to keep those employees. And I know we had a Washington Post writer on the same day that we spoke with the president's son, Eric Trump, and we were talking about, employers right now, wages are not seeing the same uptick as the economy is seeing, but it takes time for that uptick in the economy and the increase in profitability for that to settle into a business where a business owner says, okay, wow, I really have some breathing room here. It's not just 1 month's worth of breathing room. I now can see 6 months out, 12 months out. I'm now planning the way I've always dreamed of planning. I need to do something to stabilize my workforce. I need to make sure that these good people who are creating this environment for me, who are, contributing to this, that I can hold them here. So I need to, instead of doing our standard, 1.7% raise or whatever it is, I need to look at bumping that up this year to reflect what we've been able to do profit-wise. Most businesses have a plan for that. They have every 5 years or so, they'll have salary. They have a company come in and take the temperature of the salaries of all of the employees in that same industry to see if their salaries are on par, below, or above. And then if they're below, they create a plan to increase those salaries to make sure that they're at the market rate. It is a lie that employers don't consider what they're paying their employees. People do look at that. Employers do look at that. Businesses that don't do that lose their best employees, and they eventually lose market share, and they're not able to maintain a viable business. It is so important for us to not be looking at each other as, well, that's just a business owner. It's an evil person who's trying to rake employees over the coals. And I know for a fact business owners don't look at employees that way. They don't have favorable views of bad employees, but they do see their employees as valuable resources. And so it's wrong for us to, if you're an employee of anybody, it's wrong for you to have that attitude towards employers. If you happen to be working for someone who doesn't value your work, this is that economy in which you can find that next step for yourself in your work life, where you can get into a workplace where you're working for someone that has a more favorable view towards you. And sometimes, you know how it is when you're working somewhere and maybe you've made a mistake or two and you've pulled out of that and you've turned everything around and you're great, but maybe you feel like there's still some stigma of that hanging around. You know, that's an opportunity for you to grow and to trust God, to really say, you know, Lord, I wasn't the best during this rough patch of my life, or I made a couple of errors, and everyone makes mistakes, but am I still supposed to be here, or is there something else that you have for me? And start praying about that and continue to work well. And you know, make so that you know that your reference will be good. And then this is just the economy for moving around. And so if you're in a great place and you're doing well and you feel like, you know, this is a good time to ask for a raise, well, it's not a bad time to ask for one. Companies are making more money. It's not a bad time. But if you don't get that raise in that moment, it's not that you're never going to get it. It's just, it's not the right moment at that time. And so, you know, patience is in order. It's always a good time to look at your own finances. And, you know, as much as I talk about buying boots and coffee and all that, we have to be wise and prudent with what we've been given by the Lord, our work and also the money that we earn. And we also have to be willing to just, you know, straight talk here. If you're not spending your money wisely, you're not positioning yourself for increase in the form of, you know, a raise or something like that. So take that look. If you have a little bit of a feeling about something, whether it's something that you're purchasing or maybe it's one of your regular monthly expenses, I always call out the cable. And I know if you have cable, please don't feel like I'm condemning you, but I've just seen so many exponential, what I feel like blessings connected to us cutting the cord, that I'm kind of a proponent of it. Like, I just feel like if you have any budget imbalance at all, if there's any area of your life where you're like, we don't have enough money to X, cut the cord, cut your cable, put that money back into your budget, and then see what happens. It's not like you can't go back. So, you know, when I say cut the cord, I've had people like, what, cut my cable off? I'm like, yeah, just try it. Well, we really need that. I'm like, well, you don't need it. It's just TV. Well, how will we watch? You can watch regular TV. Just get a digital antenna and watch regular. But how would I be able to record my shows? You could get your old VCR out and dust it off, or you could not record the shows and just watch a show when it's on. Oh my goodness. How would we? Amazon.com. That's how you get the rest of it. Or Hulu.com. I mean, there's so many options, but it's if you have lots of disposable income and you want to pay money for cable and support those people, you know, more power to you. But if you have any budget imbalance at all and you want to find some place to cut it, that's it right there. The next one is, of course, eating out. And that's something that we do it mindlessly nowadays because there's so much available to us in the way of eating out. But you'd be surprised how you can slim down. And really, it's almost like you put your whole body back into correct order when you stop eating out so often. And we've been guilty of that. You just kind of get into a rut where someone's like, oh, I'll pick something up. Oh, I'll just pick something up. You know, anytime the schedule is out of whack at all, a little bit of planning prevents you from having to do that because you can just cook at home. And it doesn't mean you can't eat out at all. It just means you cut out a lot of that kind of during the week, last minute stuff. And then that means on the weekend you can actually go out and eat out at a movie or eat out after church. And so it's really about balancing things. But again, in an economy like this, where there's so many jobs, so many help wanted signs, an economy in which if you have some debt or you want to save up to be able to take a course or something and you don't know how you can get it done, a second job can get you there within 8 to 10 months. And you won't remember it. That's the thing about when someone suggests, oh, you can get a second job, you know, you'll see people kind of, the look on their face is like, how dare you suggest I get a second? Well, that used to be the norm. People would work 2 jobs until they got out of college. People would work 2 jobs after they got out of college. People would work 2 jobs in the summer as high schoolers. If you want something, then working a second job to get it shouldn't be a big deal, because think about last year. Anything you did that was hard last year, Do you think about that constantly? Is it like a burden to you that's constantly weighing you down? Or do you just think, yeah, for 6 months last year I had to do such and such and it wasn't the most fun thing. That's the human experience. We are kind of wired to, if we have to do something we don't want to do, it's really hard at first and then we get used to it. And then you're just like, well, I just have to do that. Or I'm just doing it. That's what I find myself doing. I'm like, oh, I didn't really want to do that. Then I'm doing it. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that. In other words, I'm just doing that. Now you're not complaining about it anymore. You're just doing it. And then when it's over, you're like, oh, thank goodness, I really didn't enjoy doing that. And you think to yourself, well, I really hadn't thought about it. And then the next year, if someone asks you, did you have to do it? You're like, sure, I had to. I had it done. You hadn't thought about it again. So if you have to work 2 jobs to get something done, awesome, get it done. I just, in the tougher times when the recession was really hard and there weren't a lot of jobs, it was normal to hear people saying, you know, I'm working here and I'm not going to be able to get anything new right now because there aren't a lot of jobs. And so I'm just, you know, I'm biding my time. But the time for biding your time doing something is over because there are so many jobs. The thing that I encourage people to do the most is to get some extra job training or education, because the foreigners are coming in and taking these high-paying jobs because we're not graduating enough people from our colleges in the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. We don't have enough math majors. We don't have enough technology-type majors like Bachelor of Science, Computer Science, Computer Engineering. We don't have nearly enough of those. And by the same token, if you're in a career field that you like and you're in your profession and you're loving it, but you have kids, that's where it doesn't matter if you have a bent for science, technology, engineering, or math. You could be an English major, but you can encourage your kids in those fields by sending them to summer camps that have that, letting them watch shows about entrepreneurship like Shark Tank. I know people think it's so silly, but that show can spur entrepreneurship on in your kids and in your family, because you see people selling, you're selling popcorn. Honestly, you're making how many millions of dollars a year selling popcorn? I kind of thought that the popcorn market was all full up. And then I watched that show and there was a lady on there selling popcorn that she was making at home until just right before she went on to Shark Tank. And that lady went on to get a deal on there. And now the popcorn is everywhere. You can find it at Sam's Club and Costco. So this is the country on earth to get it done. This is the land in which you could get it done the easiest as far as any land that you might be living on. This is the time frame to get it done. That idea that you've had that kind of wakes you up in the middle of the night, or it's the first thing you think about in the morning when you get up, now's the time to explore that and get that going in your spare time, to start that business, to start that idea, to get that extra education, to whatever it is that you've been in the back of your mind, you're thinking, can I get it done? There's somebody on Instagram who's getting it done, who has 79,000 followers, who every day, all they do is post about getting that one thing done. Oh, they're out there. People are out there getting this stuff done. You don't want to look back, 10 years from now, if God forbid, we're in another kind of low economic time or a recession, and think, man, I could have already started a business and kind of made money and sold that business and I'd be pretty set right now. This is the time to store those acorns away and set yourself up for the lean times, because it's cyclical and it does come and it does go. And the Bible tells us that we're supposed to mark the time. We're supposed to work and earn and save and do our best in the lean times and in the boom times to ensure that we are able to take care of ourselves during the different, the different undulations of what's going on in our country. I feel like, there's people out there who have all this potential, these ideas, these different things they could be doing. And instead of doing them, they're kind of caught up listening to other people talking about how it can't be done. If you have someone in your life who's telling you that can't be done, that's not something we can do, don't listen to that. God bless that person, but don't listen to that. Just do what you feel like you can do anyway. I had a lot of people encourage me along when I was doing radio, and I didn't have a show at all. And I would have people who would say, I had 2 types of people. It seemed like there were only 2 types of people in my life. There were people who were like, you can do anything. You need your own show. I had people tell me all the time, you need to be on Fox News. You need to have your own show on Fox. Well, I knew that was never going to happen because, A, I'm not the physical body type of a person who ends up with a show on Fox. And second of all, you have to live in New York City to have a show on Fox News. And that's never going to be me. Never living in New York City. Married with kids. We're not moving somewhere so I could have a job. But in addition to people telling me that, I had so many people who said, you should have your own radio show. And I would say, how would that ever happen? Like, who's going to give me a radio show? And that's exactly what's happened. Here I am sitting talking to you. So clearly somebody thought it was an okay idea to give me a show. So the other type of people I had in my life were, you don't need to work. You don't have to do this. If you're getting a lot of hate, you don't have to do this. You could just do what you were doing before. You don't have to do this. You were fine before. Don't stretch yourself out. You don't have to do this. And they were right. I didn't have to do it. But I'm so glad that I did. And that I prayed over my work so that God could direct me in the place where he would have me to go. And so I want to encourage you, if you've got this idea or this thing that you want to do, there's no better time than right now to get it done. So do it. Get it done. Pray over your work. Get it done. All right. We'll be back tomorrow with more show. Have a blessed night.